History. It's the wonderful illustration of His story. The story of how God has worked over time in the hearts and lives of His people. Just as every person has a story, so every church has a story as well. Mount Calvary Church is certainly no exception. Rich in heritage and legacy, time would never permit us to tell the myriads of ways God has so richly blessed our church. There have been good times and not so good times. Times of growth and also times of change. Through it all, God has been faithful, the Word has been taught, and lives have been touched, all to the glory of God. It is our 75th anniversary, and it is only fitting for us to take a moment and remember where we have come from and thank the Lord for all that He has done. From Mount Calvary's first building on Spruce Street to its current facility on Holly Street, the church has seen decades of growth and outreach. As we have seen how the Lord utilized each of Mount Calvary's 8 senior pastors to build upon the existing foundation, we praise God for 75 years of His faithfulness. On October 17, 1930, the Elizabethtown Chronicle reported the following story. Quote, "Transferred from his charge here to the pastorate of the Goldsboro Church by the East Pennsylvania Eldership of the Church of God. In session recently, the Reverend Charles M. Fall will not accept the new post and has sent his resignation to the Standing Committee of the Eldership. He plans to start a non-denominational tabernacle here, and a site for the structure has been acquired," the pastor said. The Reverend Fall disclosed that a tract 100 by 125 feet on Spruce Street has been donated to erect the new place of worship, which will be known as the Fundamental, Independent, Non-Denominational Tabernacle of America. A temporary wooden structure will be erected on the tabernacle site for immediate use, the Reverend Fall said, and probably a permanent building will be constructed later. It is possible that a tabernacle in New Jersey, now not in use, will be torn down and shipped to Elizabethtown. Under fierce town opposition and cries of proselytism, approximately half the Church of God's congregation, some United Brethren, and a tiny group from other denominations formed this new independent and fundamental group. The first building was 40 by 80 feet. How long did construction take? The Chronicle reported the groundbreaking as front page news on October 31, 1930. It was 90% complete for services on November 21, 1930, less than 1 month later, only 21 days. The Lord blesses obedience. The members of this new ministry ventured into their Jerusalem and Judea, ministering the gospel on the corner in front of the Mooses 5 and 10, at the Harrisburg Polyclinic Hospital, which authorized an entire corridor for services, in jails, on Middletown street corners, in various home Bible studies, and even in the wild blueberry patches where depression-worn people stocked up on free desserts. The Gospel Tabernacle comfortably seated 250, but the various speakers attracted over 400 at times. Speakers like William Newell, Dr. Pettingill, and Percy Crawford filled the pulpit, while chairs clogged the aisles, folks huddled against the walls, bodies jammed the platform, windows served as loudspeakers for those crowded outside, and the weight so strained the foundational timbers that before each meeting the churchmen soon began reinforcing the floor with 2x4 support beams. Outsiders traveling miles from the countryside and nearby towns and villages came to hear the word. In just 2 years, the facilities had become inadequate. Realizing that our actual membership still could be accommodated, Pastor Fall considered alternatives. Gradually, his vision took shape. What about something new? What about a special conference place? A place to seat hundreds comfortably? A place separate from the church on Spruce and Mechanic Streets? A place where folks could bring their lunches, children could roam, and adults could enjoy a relaxing atmosphere of fellowship between Sunday services, and yet a centralized, easily accessible place, convenient for extended nightly meeting. The potentials were limitless. The only available real estate available to meet their needs was 10 acres of woodland, a point of land presently bound by the old Hershey Road and Route 743. Route 743 replaced the local trolley line which served Elizabethtown and Hershey until 1942. A member of the church purchased the acreage, selling 3 acres to the tabernacle and 1 building lot to Pastor Fall for $2. Another member engineered the tabernacle's layout and construction. The total cost to build the tabernacle was $675. Thus, the conference ministry at Beulah Heights began. By 1937, the mailing list for the Beulah Heights Conference Grounds included over 1,000 names. In 1940, Pastor Fall resigned from the Gospel Tabernacle and moved to Springfield, Missouri to pastor a once empty church. Pastor J.A. Van Gorkum became the second pastor of this ministry. During his 2 years in E-Town, land was purchased on East Bainbridge Street, and the church parsonage was constructed on that land. On December 6, 1942, Reverend Hiram Lefevre became the Gospel Tabernacle's third pastor. The church building fund was established on June 11, 1944, with a building committee appointed to study available town properties. 6 different tracts of land merited consideration, but only one met the needs of the church. Situated on Hanover Street, a major northern access road at the time, this prime piece of real estate was offered to the church for a fraction of its market value, $500. At the same time, an announcement appeared in Sunday's Bulletin on July 8, 1945. Its opening sentence read, "A new name. We sincerely believe that it will please the Lord to give the church a new name." The reason? Because almost every sect that is extreme or untrue to the Word, in some measure at least call themselves the Gospel Tabernacle. Our purpose is to be faithful to the Word, and for others to think we are teaching what extreme groups teach would be harmful to all concerned. Several names have been submitted, and if you would care to give a name, please see the pastor. Name to be selected Wednesday prayer meeting. 3 members submitted these names: Beulah Chapel, Mount Calvary Church, and Faith Fellowship. Mr. John Garber, who suggested Mount Calvary, was the son of Paul Garber, from whom we later purchased the Hillside and Holly property. The congregation voted, and we became Mount Calvary Church. The tabernacle at Beulah Heights underwent major revisions in 1954 to 1956. The entire pavilion was enclosed. All the wooden benches were reconstructed, and a concrete flooring was poured. Pastor Lefevre had a very busy schedule, which rarely included days off, let alone a vacation. He experienced chest pains and poor circulation for years, but insisted that the Lord's work must continue at all expense. Pastor Lefevre went home to be with the Lord on August 10, 1955. On August 21, 1956, the congregation voted to call Reverend John Fleck as its 4th pastor. Pastor Fleck's ministry spanned years of activity and change. The major changes included board members' term of service limited to 4 to 6 years, revised the Constitution to specifically delineate each aspect of Mount Calvary Church, establishment of a joint choir in 1964, creation of committees designated to ensure the proper administration of an increasingly complex work, expanded radio broadcasts over 3 stations, the calling of our first visitation pastor, Beulah Heights' name changed to Mount Calvary Conference Grounds, and the girls' and boys' camp at the Grove replaced Daily Vacation Bible School. Only 11 years after the Hanover Street building was completed, it had grown too small. As God prospered the work, His people were once again faced with the need for larger facilities. Following much prayer and a special meeting of the congregation on November 18, 1958, a 6-acre tract located at Holly Street and Hillside Avenue was purchased. The Lord has reserved a special land visible from almost any location in Elizabethtown, testifying to His faithfulness throughout the years. Grading and excavation began on the morning of October 22, 1959, following a brief groundbreaking ceremony. The building was completed and the first service conducted on prayer meeting night, November 9, 1960. The new edifice was officially dedicated Sunday afternoon, January 8, 1961. God moved us from a tar paper shack on back streets to a beacon upon the hill so our light could shine. Pastor Fleck was pastor of Mount Calvary Church from 1956 to 1978. He later resigned and accepted a call to Cleveland, where he pastored a church there for many years. Pastor John Fleck, who is now with the Lord, was the visionary who saw the need to have a Christian-based education for the church families and surrounding communities. On March 25, 1979, Reverend Terry Smith became the 5th pastor of Mount Calvary Church. Under his ministry, both the church and the Christian school experienced much growth. The Smiths had a real passion for missions and the missionary outreach of the church. In 1983, the church sent the Smiths on a 39-day missionary tour of 7 European countries, where they visited 8 of our supported missionary family. During Pastor Smith's ministry, the church added its first full-time youth pastor, Joe Carter, in July of 1979, and its first full-time Christian education director, Tim Patterson, in the summer of 1982. During Tim Patterson's years at Mount Calvary, the Circle C Day Camp ministry began, which continues to this day. Pastor Smith resigned in 1987 and moved to New Jersey, where he became the senior pastor at the Haddon Heights Baptist Church. Reverend Marvin Engel was installed as the 6th pastor of Mount Calvary Church on August 2, 1987. Pastor Engel came to Mount Calvary during a very difficult time period in the life of this ministry. His teachings on the spirit-controlled temperaments and on family life produced many positive results. During his ministry at Mount Calvary Church, 2 men were added to the staff whose lives had been positively influenced by Pastor Engel in earlier years. Ken Howard, formerly a teacher at Mount Calvary Christian School, returned to the school as its new administrator in 1988, and Reverend Dan Gilbert came to Mount Calvary in August of 1994 as its new associate pastor. Pastor Engel resigned in 1995 and moved to Michigan, where he pastors the Grove Bible Church in St. John's. On May 16, 1996, Reverend Joe Carter, along with his wife Kathy, moved back to Elizabethtown after serving for 13 years as the senior pastor of Grace Bible Church in Barrington, New Jersey. Pastor Carter began his ministry as the 7th pastor of Mount Calvary Church on May 18, 1996. Although the Carters had been away from Mount Calvary for 13 years, there were a number of occasions when they returned to speak at several church functions. Their involvement in the life of the ministry and its people had never been totally severed. Under the leadership of Pastor Carter and Pastor Gilbert, the church stabilized and started to grow once again. New Bible studies, men's and women's ministries, the upgrading of facilities, a renewed commitment to world missions, and a spirit of trust allowed the ministry to thrive in the love of the Lord and in the truth of His Word. The Lord also provided Mount Calvary with an additional associate pastor in 1997, with Pastor Paul and Kim Bareka, who had previously served here in an interim youth position, returned to this area to work with preteen, teens, and adult ministries. Pastor Carter resigned his position in April of 2000, and Pastor Dan Gilbert and Pastor Paul Bareka were both led of the Lord to join other ministries in 2002. The following years were some trying years for the people of Mount Calvary. God in His graciousness provided Mount Calvary with a wonderful leader named Dr. Gil Peterson to help guide us through. With Dr. Peterson's wisdom and guidance, the Lord led Mount Calvary to call Pastor Chandler Cutting as our 8th and current senior pastor in August of 2003. Pastor Cutting, along with his wife Jody, came to us from Richfield Mennonite Church in Richfield, Pennsylvania, where he was an associate pastor for 4 years. Knowing that we would need to fill the vacant staff positions due to the increased needs of the church, Mount Calvary called Pastor Jonathan Whitmer and his wife Dana as the youth pastor, and soon after the church called Pastor Rob Phillips and his wife Annie as the pastor of outreach and evangelism. So what is the story of Mount Calvary Church? It's the story of our faithfulness to God, but more importantly, it's the story of God's faithfulness to us. Here we are today, still enjoying the blessings of God's faithfulness after 75 years of teaching the Word and touching the life. But it doesn't stop here. With a vision for the future, Lord willing, we'll continue to be a light to the community of Elizabethtown so we can continue teaching the Word and touching the life by growing deeper through worship, stronger through discipleship, closer through fellowship, and larger through outreach. As Paul says in Philippians chapter 3, verse 13, "Brethren, I count not myself to have apprehended, but this one thing I do, forgetting those things which are behind, and reaching forth into those things which are before, I press toward the mark for the prize of the high calling of God in Christ Jesus."